In the Highlands of Ethiopia, there survives a sacred library that no Western scholar has ever managed to fully catalogue. While Rome decided which texts you could read, some monks were hiding books capable of rewriting all of Christianity. For centuries, we thought we knew the Bible, but the truth is far more expansive than we were ever allowed to imagine. The faith that reached Europe was just a fragment of something much older, preserved in the mountains of Ethiopian Tigray. And among those secrets beats a forbidden question. Did a 13th apostle exist that history decided to erase? The guardians of those monasteries assert something disturbing about the origin of the wisdom that once fled the world. Today, we will cross the gates of those forbidden libraries to uncover what the guardians of the Ark cannot tell you. What you are about to hear does not appear in school manuals or in the sermons preached every Sunday in the West. It is a story of kings, giants, and angels who dared to bestow upon mankind a forbidden knowledge. Brace yourselves. From here on, everything you believed about the origin of faith will no longer feel so certain. Let's begin with a difference that almost no one knows, which completely changes our understanding of the Scriptures. The Bible read in the West has between 66 and 73 books, varying by the tradition that supports it. However, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church preserves a much larger canon, consisting of 81 sacred books. That number is not a whim or a copyist's error, but the result of a memory that the West preferred to forget. Among those texts are works that were banned, burned, or expelled from the meetings of bishops in Europe. These books are preserved in Ge'ez, an ancient liturgical language that today is hardly spoken outside monasteries. Monks copy them by hand onto parchment, using natural inks, repeating gestures that have hardly changed in centuries. While entire empires fell and changed religions, here the monks continued copying the same pages without altering them. This obsessive fidelity turned Ethiopia into the most complete archive of a memory that the rest of the world deemed lost. Think for a moment about what it means that a single region saved what almost all others decided to destroy. It was not by chance, but by the decision not to subject faith to trends or orders coming from distant lands. For the monks, copying a sacred text is a form of prayer that connects them to those who wrote it long before. Some of those volumes weigh so much that 2 hands are needed to hold them, and a sturdy table to read them. Their wooden and leather covers have withstood earthquakes, wars, and invasions without losing the written word. That is why no copying error is taken lightly, and a single manuscript can take years of patient work to complete. Each rescued page is a silent victory against forgetfulness, a battle fought with ink instead of swords. The most famous is the Book of Enoch, a text thought lost to the world for 1,000 years. In Ethiopian monasteries, it never vanished, copied with devotion from generation to generation without interruption. Enoch describes celestial beings who descended to earth and revealed forbidden knowledge to mankind. It speaks of the Watchers, their pacts with human women, and a lineage of giants born from that impossible union. The book is divided into several parts, one of which recounts how those beings taught secrets that should not be revealed. Another part describes heavenly journeys, unknown regions, and a calendar that measures time in an astonishing way. It does not limit itself to narrating the past, as it also contains visions about the ultimate destiny awaiting all humanity. It speaks of a Son of Man who will appear at the end of times to restore justice over a corrupted land. Many scholars believe these images significantly influenced the writings that later became the New Testament. For centuries, Europe only knew fragments and isolated quotes until a traveler found complete copies in Ethiopia. Those copies demonstrated that the entire text had survived solely thanks to the monks of the African highlands. Later, among the Dead Sea Scrolls, fragments of Enoch appeared that confirmed its extreme antiquity. That discovery proved that the book was not a late invention, but a writing that was already circulating before our era. The New Testament itself cites Enoch in one of its letters, a sign that this book was respected by the early faithful. That a text cited by the apostles was later expelled from the canon reveals how much history could be rewritten. Alongside Enoch survives the Book of Jubilees, a rewriting of Genesis that details forgotten chronologies and names. The Jubilees organize sacred history into cycles of 49 years, measuring time in an almost secretive way. The books of Maccabean are also preserved, distinct from the Maccabees known in the West and almost ignored in Europe. The Ascension of Isaiah is a visionary tale of the prophet journeying through the heavens and pondering the future. Among its treasures are the Gospels of Garima, illuminated copies that are among the oldest in Christianity. For a long time their age was doubted until modern analyses placed them in the early centuries of the faith. Each of these texts was, at some point and place, considered dangerous, uncomfortable, or simply too revealing. The inevitable question is why these writings survived in Africa while they were destroyed in the rest of the planet. For the monks, the answer is clear yet unsettling. Someone must protect the truth from those who wish to erase it. It's important to recall how, centuries ago, it was decided which books would be included in the Bible and which rejected. In the great councils, powerful men voted on which revelations were legitimate and which should remain in the shadows. What did not fit with the official doctrine was set aside, and many manuscripts ended up in the fire without leaving a copy. Some texts were labeled as heresy, others as superstition, and a few simply disappeared without explanation. The criteria were not always spiritual, as often politics, control, and fear of certain ideas weighed more heavily. But Ethiopia was left out of that control, isolated by mountains and deserts that turned it into a refuge of knowledge. There, the texts were not filtered according to political convenience, but were preserved as they had been received. That is why today the Ethiopian canon is a time capsule that holds the oldest version of the biblical memory of the world. In its rock-hewn churches carved from living rock, those books continue to be read as if time had not passed. And within that capsule beats an even bolder story, capable of challenging everything we thought we knew about origins. To understand it, we must travel to a time when two legendary kingdoms sealed an encounter shrouded in mystery. We speak of King Solomon of Jerusalem and the enigmatic Queen of Sheba, sovereign of lands that many place in Ethiopia. The fame of Solomon had crossed seas and deserts, and the queen wanted to verify with her own eyes if that was true. It is worth remembering that Solomon's kingdom was famous for its wealth, its dazzling temple, and its legendary justice. The queen of a distant land embarked on this journey, showing how much the fame of that wisdom mattered back then. The meeting of these two sovereigns has inspired poets, painters, and storytellers worldwide for centuries. In Ethiopia, it weighs most heavily, felt as a personal history rather than a distant foreign legend. According to the account, the queen traveled an endless road drawn by the fame of the supernatural wisdom of the monarch. She arrived laden with gold, spices, and precious stones, ready to test the king's mind with difficult enigmas. Solomon answered each question, and the queen was dazzled by a wisdom that seemed to surpass the merely human. One version tells how the king cleverly tricked the queen into breaking her oath not to take anything from him. From that gesture, the legend says, was born the bond that would forever unite two lineages and two continents far apart. What transpired between them was not just an exchange of gifts, but the origin of a dynasty that would change destiny. From that union, tradition holds, was born a son named Menelik, heir to a blood considered doubly sacred. Menelik grew up far from his father, but when he became a man, he undertook the long journey to Jerusalem to meet Solomon. The king honored him, wanting to keep him, but the young man longed to return to his mother's land to the south. Before leaving, Menelik received his father's blessing, and, as told, a company fit for a future sovereign. With him traveled priests, scribes and warriors, an entire court destined to found a new kingdom in distant lands. All of this was recorded in a monumental work little known in the West, called Kebra Nagast, The Glory of Kings. That book is not just a simple legend for Ethiopians, but the text that explains why their land was chosen by heaven. The Kebra Nagast asserts that true wisdom did not remain in Jerusalem, but embarked on a journey southward. And with that wisdom, they claim, traveled the most sacred and feared object in the entire history of the people of Israel. Menelik returned not alone, but with the firstborn sons of the nobles from Solomon's kingdom. Those young men formed a consecrated elite, a kind of brotherhood tasked with guarding an irreplaceable secret. In this way, a portion of Israel's spiritual heart would have taken root in the African continent forever. For Ethiopia, this account is not folklore, but the foundation of its identity and proof of a covenant with the most sacred. Its emperors proclaimed themselves direct descendants of Solomon and proudly bore the title of Lion of Judah. The last of them reigned well into the 20th century, closing a dynasty said to have been initiated by Menelik. Few nations in the world can claim such a long continuity between the myth of their origin and their true history. Some historians debate where Sheba really was, but Ethiopian tradition harbors no doubt about it. To them, their land was the cradle of kings and the guardian of a legacy no other nation could preserve with such zeal. If we accept that account, sacred history did not flow in a single direction, but branched out southward as well. And in each branching, a fragment of truth could travel that the West never came to know or even suspect. Here arises a dizzying idea that connects with the enigma of the apostle that almost no one dares to name aloud. What if spiritual light reached Ethiopia long before the missionaries, brought by a forgotten figure? The idea of a 13th apostle is unsettling because it breaks the perfect number that tradition set 2 millennia ago. 12 were the chosen ones alongside the Master, 12 the tribes, 12 the pillars upon which the new faith was built. To add a 13th would mean admitting that there was a messenger outside the official circle, ignored by the records. And if that messenger brought the word to Africa before anyone else, the entire map of origins would be profoundly altered. Some accounts tell of a 13th bearer of the word who sowed the faith long before it was recognized. He does not appear in the Gospels circulating in Rome, but his trace seems to pulse in the oldest songs of these monks. He could be an unknown disciple, a wandering prophet, or a teacher whose identity history decided to veil carefully. Some remember the Ethiopian official who, according to the Acts, was baptized on the way by a first disciple. That man returned to his land carrying a seed of faith long before the message reached other great nations. Perhaps that seed germinated in silence, far from the spotlight, founding a tradition that preceded official Christianity. However, Whenever custodians are questioned about this point, the answer is always the same: prudent silence. That silence neither denies nor confirms, but leaves open a possibility that no religious authority wants to examine. If a 13th apostle existed in Africa, the official history of Christianity would need to be entirely rewritten, and the wisdom that fled south would cease to be a poetic myth to become a concrete and verifiable heritage. To follow this lead, we must head to a city whose name resonates like an ancient promise: the sacred Aksum. Aksum was the capital of a powerful empire, a crossroads of trade between Africa, Arabia, and the distant Mediterranean world. Its monarchs minted their own coins and erected stone obelisks that still today defy the logic of ancient engineering. On the outskirts of the city lies a forest of granite stelae, some taller than several-story buildings. No one knows for sure how they were carved, transported, and erected with the technology that was supposed to exist then. One of them, toppled long ago, lies broken on the ground like a fallen giant that the earth could not sustain. This proximity between the monumental and the impossible fuels the idea that a lost knowledge operated in Aksum. Visitors to Aksum today sense a unique solemnity, as if time there carries a heavier weight. The ancient chants, the stone bells, and the smoke of incense transport the traveler to an irretrievable time. But its true fame does not arise from its gold or its obelisks, but from what is said to still be guarded today. In the heart of the city stands the Church of St. Mary of Zion, watched over day and night by an unyielding gaze. There, in a small chapel closed to the world, Ethiopians claim that rests the original and true Ark of the Covenant. The Ark is the chest that, according to the Bible, contained the tablets of the law given to Moses at the top of a mountain. It was the point where heaven and earth touched, the invisible throne from which a sacred presence manifested. For millennia, its trace was lost, and armies, kings, and adventurers searched for it in vain throughout the known world. However, in Aksum, they assert that it was never lost, but was secretly brought from Jerusalem by Menelik himself. They say that the ark left the temple without the priests noticing, guided by a will greater than human. A single monk, chosen for life, has the privilege and the burden of guarding this object without ever leaving it. The guardian never leaves the sacred precinct, receives no visitors, and dies without revealing what he has seen. He spends his days in prayers and fasts, separated from the world, entirely devoted to a mission that no one else can share. As his end approaches, he himself points to his successor, passing on a responsibility that weighs like a mountain. No one else can approach, for tradition warns that the power contained in the Ark can strike down the imprudent. Some researchers have requested for decades to examine the relic, but have always received the same resounding negative. The Guardian has never allowed a camera, a scientist, or a stranger to cross the threshold of his small closed sanctuary. This hermeticism, far from dissipating the mystery, has made it grow, attracting curious people from all corners. For believers, on the other hand, there is nothing to prove, as faith in what rests there needs no proof at all. Their solitude is not a punishment, but an offering, the total surrender of a life in exchange for the security of a secret. It is hard to imagine such devotion in a world that measures value by fame, noise, and constant exposure. In these mountains, however, the greatest honor consists precisely in disappearing so that something greater may endure. The processions that traverse its streets seem frozen in time, completely oblivious to the rush of the modern world. And over all of them hovers the same shared certainty that the most sacred of all remains very close, yet invisible. In every Ethiopian church, a replica of the Ark is kept, a sacred tablet that only priests may contemplate closely. Once a year, during the Timkat festival, those replicas are paraded wrapped in cloth, while the multitude prays. It is the echo of a greater mystery, the constant reminder that the original remains hidden just a few kilometers away. Not far from there, other monasteries cling to the peaks, accessible only by climbing ropes or dizzying paths. In those almost unreachable refuges, monks have preserved for centuries texts that the outside world believed lost. This image of a power capable of destruction connects with much older tales about objects and beings of colossal strength. Here, the story of the Ark intertwines with the memory of giants and the need to protect fragile humanity. Because the texts that these monks preserve do not speak only of faith, but of a past when the earth was very different. They speak of the Nephilim, those giants born of the union between the celestial watchers and the daughters of men. The accounts describe the Nephilim as beings of colossal stature, capable of bending men with their mere presence. Their name has sometimes been translated as the Fallen, and at other times as those who caused others to fall. Enoch claimed their existence caused such corruption that heaven chose to cleanse the world with an unprecedented flood. Those giants would have left behind a trail of violence, hunger, and ruin that nearly extinguished life. Their memory endures in myths across half the world, where ancient giants appeared time and again before a great catastrophe. Enormous skulls, colossal bones, and gigantic weapons populate the popular tales of very distant peoples. Although science explains them differently, those myths share an echo, the memory of a larger and more fearsome race. For Ethiopian monks, those scattered echoes would be fragments of a single truth, forgotten by almost all cultures. For them, guarding these manuscripts means protecting a warning about a boundary that must never be crossed. The Ark and the forbidden books would thus form a single protective system designed to safeguard the human species. It would not be just religious objects, but instruments intended to contain knowledge that is too dangerous. And the monks would be the last links in a chain that dates back to the days when giants walked the earth. Imagine what it means to dedicate an entire life to guarding a secret that you can never fully understand or reveal. That silent dedication, repeated over countless generations, is perhaps the true miracle hidden in these mountains. This is where the Ethiopian view of the Book of Enoch differs from the teachings of European churches. In Western tradition, the Watchers are often described as fallen angels, demons given to absolute evil. They are portrayed as punished rebels, malevolent creatures whose only function was to drag man into the abyss. But in the reading preserved by these monasteries, the truth is more complex and much more disturbing than it seems. For them, the Watchers were not mere demons, but beings who came from heaven, bringing real and tangible knowledge. Enoch names the chiefs of those beings, leaders who imparted to men various arts and forbidden knowledge. One taught the art of forging metals, another shared herbal secrets, while another decoded the stars' hidden language. They also taught writing, astronomy, and the art of reading the secret movements that hide in the firmament. Their sin would not have been pure malice, but revealing to humanity knowledge for which it was not yet prepared. They delivered power before the wisdom to use it, and that hastiness unleashed consequences impossible to stop. The punishment was swift, and the Watchers were chained in dark places until the day of final judgment. Their giant offspring perished in the flood, yet their spirit would still roam the world, as the tale recounts. That transgression altered the course of history and left a legacy in the world that never completely disappeared. Because, according to this view, the Watchers did not only leave words, but a trace in the very blood of many peoples. A genetic footprint transmitted through their descendants that would explain abilities and memories impossible to erase. If their blood truly mingled with ours, part of that legacy would still be pulsing deep within the species. Not as a curse, but as a dormant potential that could awaken when knowledge overflows once more. It would be the secret reason why certain knowledge resurfaces time and again, as if it slept in the depths of humanity. And the monks, some affirm, would guard in their texts the keys to recognizing that hidden heritage in our species. Their manuscripts would not be mere religious chronicles, but maps of a lineage that branches out from the beginning of time. That is why they argue that understanding the Watchers is not to study evil, but to study the very origin of civilization. Every art, every technique, and every science would have a root much older and stranger than the official books admit. It is an idea that both frightens and fascinates, placing the origin of our intelligence beyond just the human experience. It is unsettling to think that the first human techniques came from a source alien to our own species. If tools, weapons, and calculations arrived as a poisoned gift, the story of progress changes fundamentally. Perhaps that is why Enoch insists that knowledge without measure is as dangerous as any weapon forged by human hands. That warning, written thousands of years ago, resonates today with a force that few would expect from such an ancient text. The monks repeat it as one who guards a key, aware that it opens a door that not everyone would know how to cross. And while the world rushes after new powers, they silently remember where that first and fatal excess led. However, this knowledge remains locked away, for revealing it would mean challenging everything that religions have built. Each manuscript copied in those cold cells is, at once, an act of faith and a link in a chain of millennia-old silence. And the deeper one delves into its pages, the more evident it becomes that the official history left out too many answers. The monks read these prophecies not as tales of the past, but as warnings directed at the time yet to come. For them, what happened with the Watchers could repeat the day humanity crosses a forbidden line once more. They maintain that that story did not end, but remained suspended, awaiting a conclusion still to be written. At this point, all the pieces of the enigma begin to fit together in a way that is as unexpected as it is unsettling. The expanded canon, the lineage of Sheba, the hidden ark, and the Watchers seem to be parts of a single fragmented tale. Each one separately seems like a legend, but together they outline the contour of a story that was never fully told to us. Perhaps the 13th apostle was never a specific man who preached in a square before an expectant crowd. Perhaps it was something subtler and more powerful, able to cross centuries without a face or fixed name. Maybe that 13th apostle is, in reality, a body of knowledge that Ethiopia has protected for millennia. A collective wisdom, inherited from Enoch and the ancients, kept in waiting for the moment that closes all times. Not a single voice, but the accumulated whisper of generations of guardians who chose not to let that memory die. If that idea were true, the monks of Tigray would not be mere religious figures, but sentinels of the planet's memory. And every book they guard would be a seed destined to germinate the day humanity is finally ready. Meanwhile, the world continues to ignore that the answer to its oldest questions sleeps in a corner of Africa. Perhaps that is why those monasteries resist time, unaware of noise, devoted to a mission not imposed by force. Perhaps that is why these mountains hold a magnetism that no traveler can fully explain upon returning home. Something in them whispers that the true history is stranger, older, and grander than we dare to imagine. Because the true mystery is not only what those monks guard, but what we prefer not to look at directly. Perhaps the deepest wisdom does not consist in finding all the answers, but in accepting the weight of what we do not know. Ethiopia humbles us, reminding us that the whole truth may never fit within the pages of just one book. And as long as that story remains unwritten, every unanswered question reminds us how much of the past remains sealed. Perhaps one day those doors will open and we will finally understand why they were guarded so jealously for centuries. And now the question is for you. Who have come this far following the trail of a mystery that few dare to look at? If you could enter a secret library in Ethiopia, which forbidden book would you choose to read without hesitation? Would you choose the Book of Enoch and its revelations, or the lost gospel of an apostle whose name remains unknown? Share your thoughts in the comments. We want to know what truth you'd pursue, even at great risk. The history we know is only the version that someone allowed us to read, while the rest waits in the shadows. If you want to keep digging into the folds of the sacred history that no one tells you, subscribe and activate the bell.